This is a comp for people without Wukong. It's got 2 5-stars and 2 free units. Both of these 5-stars have story summons available, so you can summon them at any time if you're watching this in the future and Wukong's not available anymore. You could try replacing Ray with Bernard. Bernard is a 3-star, so he's more accessible, but that also means he's got much worse base stats, and his sustain overall is a lot worse than Ray's. Bellona, I think, is also really hard to replace. Since we don't have the AoEs from Wukong, it's pretty difficult to remove all the Sever stacks, or remove all the Tentacle stacks and apply Sever instead without Bellona's AoEs. Also, the Bellona replacement that I was using in the Wukong teams was Adin, and they're both here, so you can't really replace Bellona with Adin. There's also Mercenary Helga, who you could try to replace Adin or Bellona with, but it's a pretty significant damage drop-off since Helga's got no AoEs, lower defense break chance, and her S3 is a non-attack skill which wastes a turn, and all it does is give attack buff when Vivian's already giving attack buff to everybody. First, let's take a look at their stats. For Ray, you at least want to get the -1 turn cooldown on his S3 to help him put immunity buff up more often. You can get the extra healing ones if you need to. Same thing with the barrier. If you're having trouble staying alive, then you should Mola this. For Artifact, you want for the EE, you want the -1 turn cooldown on his S1 so that he can put his S3 up more often and give us immunity buff. And for Artifact, you want Touch of Rekos. This heals all allies when he gets attacked, and he's getting hit every single turn since he's in the front row. If you don't have this, then the alternatives are Shamadra Staff, Rod of Amaryllis, or Unfading Memories, and also not having this might make it so you need to Mola his S2 and S3 more. Speed, you want to make sure he's going first on the team, so he can cleanse the Venom stacks off before anyone else goes. Immunity set would be really good for him to block the Venom on himself. Since he's tanking, the injury hurts a lot more here than it does when he's in the backline and Wukong is tanking instead. If you don't have immunity set, it's definitely doable, it's just immunity helps a lot with his tanking. F-Res isn't needed. If you go 200, you can block the Venom stacks, but immunity is much easier, and you could just invest the F-Res into HP and defense instead. The HP and defense is useful since he's tanking, so he's going to be tanking a lot of damage. For Vivian, S3CR push EE to help her cycle more. Call Ultra's my favorite artifact for her. Some people use Etika Scepter, but it's a little bit too inconsistent, and sometimes you proc it too much, sometimes you proc it too little. If you have a max limit break Spirit's Breath, I think that might actually be the best one, but it's a little bit hard to get, of course. For speed, just make sure she's not moving before Ray. She should go right after him. Crit chance you can go down to 93 because Verdant Adin gives 7% crit chance to all allies, and the rest of the stats should just be into damage. You can go speed and either crit or torrent sets for Vivian. And then for her Molas, you want the S3 -1 turn Mola so she can put up immunity and attack buff up more often. And then her S2, since we don't have Wukong, Vivian and Bellona are our primary damage dealers, with Adin helping out a little bit. And once you hit RC21, Vivian's doing like half of the damage, so Molaing this is nice, but it's not mandatory, of course. Now we've got Bellona. For Bellona, at the very least, Mola her S3 to get 100% death break chance, and if you want extra damage, you can get the last one here, and all the Molas in the S2. Her EE should be the -1 turn S2 EE. This lets her S2 every other turn. And then for Artifact, if you need healing, you can go Bloodstone. If you're somehow sustaining without it, then you can swap it over to a damage boosting artifact instead. Stats, you can go speed and either crit or torrent. You need 105 effectiveness in order to debuff consistently, and same thing, 93 crit chance. Last up, we've got Verdant Adin. For her artifact, you can use any damage boosting artifact, and this should probably actually be this one, slightly higher damage. And then you want to be on speed or destruction, and then crit or torrent. So 93 crit chance and 105 F. The thing about the speed for Bellona and Adin is before RC21, it doesn't really matter that much who goes first. At RC21, you want Adin to go first ideally. So you could set it up like that so you don't have to change gear later. But prior to RC21, it doesn't really matter who goes first. And then these are all free, so you don't have to worry about them. Same thing with her skill tree. It's just free from clearing story and doing the missions. One quick thing. The RC8 run was recorded on my phone while I was at work, and somehow my YouTube started autoplaying, so there's music overlaid on top of that run. I'll leave a link to the song and the song's info in the description for anybody who wants it. For devices, we're still using the AoE damage increase device since we have no warrior, and the new device we pick up lets thieves increase their damage dealt when using single target attacks and also extend debuff durations every other turn. There's also the mage device on this road that lets Vivian S2 every single turn, but extending the duration of the severs and the death breaks is more impactful overall. So at RC8, we leave the boss with 28% HP, giving us a consistent 2-tap. One thing to note is that the death break duration is a little bit deceiving. We have Thief Diva extension device, and you can see that after the boss uses S3, the death break drops to 1 turn, then goes back up to 2. That's not from the debuff extension device, since the sever stacks didn't go up. That's just from Adin letting S3 again. That's not something you want to count on, because it just applies another RNG check. We did so much damage though that even without any death break, we probably still 2-tap. Comparing this damage with the damage from some of my other comps, since I didn't do an RC2 run with this team, I think that at RC2 you're probably only 3-tapping, but at RC8 you're 2-tapping, which is pretty good progress. For this team at RC15, we don't really have a choice as to which one we're going to take. It's just the Thief one, since we don't have a Warrior and we don't have a Knight. This one makes it so that, not just for AoEs, but every single time Adin attacks, she'll be able to remove a tentacle and inflict sever. This also makes it so that when she S2s, she'll actually remove 2 tentacles and inflict 2 severs. So this combined with the device that makes it so every time Adin uses her S1 or S3, if it's every other turn, she'll increase debuff durations by 1. Let's just start ramping up the severs and keep them stacked up pretty efficiently.
제가 여기 있는 한 죽게 내버려 두진 않네.
부름에 응답하라. 아멸이여! 들척대지 말고 이제 그만 쓰러져. 이제야 싸우는 것 같네요. 후회하실 겁니다.
안심하세요.
꽤 아플 거야. 절 재밌게 해주세요. 차! 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 피날레를 장식해볼까? 어디서 감히
모든 이들에게 괴로움을 안식.
어디 보는 거야? 여기라고 여기. 자, 조심하세요. 너
치료하겠습니다.
금단의 마법이 모두 파괴하라. 피할 수 없을까? 후회하실 겁니다. 더 버텨주실 수 있죠?
제가 왔으니 고통은 여기까지입니다.
차! 각오하라고. 필살의 일격이니까. 시전 완료. 이건 어때요?
A solid damage increase from our RC8 run. Not enough to push us into one-shotting, but we are getting kind of close. Do keep in mind, like I mentioned during the RC8 run, Deathbreak landing the whole fight is because after the boss used S3, Adin landed Deathbreak again with her S3, and not from the device that increases debuff duration. You don't really want to have a second RNG check in there, but with how much damage we did, even if you missed that second Deathbreak or both Deathbreaks, you still would be able to 2-tap. It is something to keep in mind though for when you're trying to push one-shotting, that the one-shots aren't going to be just from landing the first Deathbreak. Us landing the first Deathbreak has a 97.75% chance, so honestly having that and the second Deathbreak isn't as bad in the typical needing to land 2 Deathbreak situations, but it is something to keep in mind. We've made it to RC21 and we can pick up this new device which makes it so every single time Bellona uses an AoE, she'll extend debuffs to the target by 1 turn. This applies to her S3 and S2 and the S3 that procs off her S1 when she's at full focus. This makes this row 2 debuff extension device kind of redundant, and we can swap it over to the mage one instead, letting Vivian use her S2 every single turn except for when she has her S3 up. There are a couple of other things to note. Since Bellona is the one extending the debuffs now, it's actually ideal for Adin to go first. It's going to be a slight damage increase, and if your gear's struggling to one-shot, then you should make sure that Adin's going before Bellona. Also, since we're being able to permanently maintain Sever stacks now, we don't actually need Bloodstone, and we can swap it over to a damage boosting device or artifact instead. I'm going to swap this onto Bellona since she should be doing more damage than Adin, and Adin can get the backup damage artifact instead.
제가 여기 있는 한 죽게 내버려두진 않아요.
금단의 마법이여 모두 파괴하라. 질척대지 말고 이제 그만 쓰러져. 더 버텨주실 수 있죠? 어디서 감히
안심하세요.
피할 수 없을까? 절 재밌게 해주세요. 시전 완료. 차! 차! 피날레를 장식해볼까? 후회하실 겁니다.
모든 이들에게 괴로운 안식.
각오하라고. 필살의 일격이니까. 가볼까요? 어디서 감히
치료하겠습니다.
바람을 가르듯. 구름에 응답하라. 암울여. 시전 완료. 이제야 싸우는 것 같네요.
제가 왔으니 고통은 여기까지입니다.
어디서 감히
So now we've got a one-shot going. It is reliant on Death Break, but we've got a 97.75% chance to land Death Break due to our 2 sources of Death Break at the start. Also, since we only had 3 turns left, my gear probably can't one-shot without landing Death Break, but if you make it so that Adin goes before Bellona, and you improve some of the gear on these units, and maybe Mola Bellona's S2 and S3, you probably could get a one-shot going even without landing any Death Breaks. You can also see that with a variation where Bellona goes before Adin, when the boss uses S3, one of the Sever stacks wears off. If you have Adin go first, that won't happen. So overall, I feel like this team performed pretty well. A consistent 2-shot at RC8 and RC15, but being able to one-shot at RC21 with a 97.75% chance since we have 2 Death Break sources is pretty nice. This is definitely very useful considering Wukong isn't a limited unit, but he doesn't have a side story summon, and even if he did, you wouldn't be able to summon him until Rift is probably gone. So people who are coming in after and don't have the chance to get Wukong, it's nice to know that there's a comp that still performs very well.